For the longest time, I thought we were all in this together. My parents always said we were a tight-knit unit, that no matter how tough life got, we'd get through it as a family. And for a while, I believed it. Because what else do you believe when the people you love look you in the eye and say, "We're struggling, but we've got each other"? The pandemic had hit us hard. My dad lost his job after 20 years. My mom's freelance gigs dried up almost overnight, and I, fresh out of college, moved back home to help make ends meet. We clipped coupons, we canceled cable, we wore sweaters indoors to avoid turning on the heat. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like solidarity, like we were weathering the storm together. I gave up a lot that year, turned down job offers out of state because I didn't want to leave them behind, skipped nights out with friends. I even delayed grad school because the idea of taking on more debt while my family was barely staying afloat felt selfish. I figured we'll bounce back eventually, and when we do, I'll have my chance. That's what I kept telling myself. My brother Jake had it a bit easier. He was still in college, studying business at a private university out of state. Mom and Dad told me they scraped together scholarships and financial aid, and that Jake was working part-time to cover the rest. I didn't question it. Why would I? We were all making sacrifices, right? Sometimes I envied him, living in a dorm, going to frat parties, planning study abroad trips, but I reminded myself that he was still a part of the struggle too. We just played different roles in the same battle. Or so I thought. Everything started to shift last month, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. It began when Jake came home for winter break driving a brand new Tesla. Not leased, bought. When I asked about it, he laughed it off. It's a graduation gift from some family friends. Nothing crazy. That didn't sit right with me. Our parents didn't even get me a cake for my birthday last year. We said no gifts because things were tight. So who were these magical family friends buying luxury vehicles? Then came the new clothes, the expensive watch, the trip to Iceland he was planning for spring. I tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach, but it wouldn't loosen. The final blow came when I walked into the garage and saw my dad grinning like a teenager, helping Jake install a custom home EV charger. "Can't let the car just sit in the driveway," he said proudly. "Gotta take care of it." That's when it hit me. We weren't struggling together. I was struggling. They were just watching. And suddenly everything, the sacrifices, the missed chances, the years I gave up, started to feel like one big lie. It wasn't just the Tesla. It was everything that came with it. The way Mom and Dad beamed as Jake revved the engine in the driveway like they'd just crowned a king. The way they passed off the car as a casual gift from friends, but then spent hours polishing it, adjusting the mirrors, making sure the charging cable was perfectly mounted, like they had been waiting for this moment all year. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that maybe I was just bitter. But bitterness doesn't explain why suddenly Jake had a new MacBook designer luggage and a platinum credit card for emergencies. Bitterness didn't fabricate the late-night conversation I overheard, where my parents were discussing which investment account to tap for Jake's spring break trip. I stood outside their door, frozen. We can just pull from the Roth. He deserves it. He's worked so hard. Deserves it? I had been working full-time, contributing to the bills, cooking dinner, running errands, folding laundry, and somehow I never deserved a single thing. My clothes were second-hand. My phone was 3 years old and cracked. I hadn't gone on vacation in 5 years. But sure, Jake deserved Iceland. The curtain was slowly lifting. Memories that once felt warm began to sting. I remember last Christmas, how we all agreed not to exchange gifts to save money. I baked cookies, wrote handmade cards. Jake got a new gaming console. They said it was from a sweepstakes. Sweepstakes, my ass. I thought about the time I asked to borrow $200 for a security deposit when I was considering renting a small apartment closer to work. Mom said they couldn't help, that things were too tight. She looked genuinely regretful. I believed her. I walked away thinking, it's okay. We're all struggling. That they would if they could, but they could. They just didn't want to. Not for me. That realization didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. Quiet moments, subtle shifts, a glance, a comment, a receipt left on the kitchen table. And then one day, Jake offhandedly mentioned the car had been in their name all along. That Dad had bought it months ago and just waited for the right time to give it to him. My stomach dropped. That was the moment I realized I was never really part of this struggling family. It's funny how memory works. When you grow up in a family, you don't question things right away. You accept them, normalize them. You make excuses for them because the alternative, that your own family might never have really loved you the same, is too painful to face. But once that crack starts to show, once the mask slips, everything starts to look different in hindsight. Suddenly I couldn't stop remembering all the moments I had brushed off, the times I had swallowed disappointment because they didn't mean it like that or they were doing their best. But were they? Like my 16th birthday. Jake got a surprise party when he turned 16. The backyard was decked out with string lights and a rented speaker system. Mom baked his favorite triple chocolate cake from scratch. Dad grilled steaks. All his friends were there, plus half the neighborhood. It was this huge celebration, pictures all over Facebook, my parents smiling like it was the proudest day of their lives. Me? I got a text from Mom around noon. "Happy birthday, honey. We'll do something special this weekend." The weekend came and went. I got a card with a $10 Starbucks gift card inside, signed "Love You." No cake, no dinner, no family time, just silence. Back then, I convinced myself they were busy. Money was tight. Schedules were hard. I even told myself maybe I didn't want all that attention anyway. I didn't want to be needy. But now, with the Tesla gleaming in the driveway, the excuses didn't hold up anymore, or the time I got accepted into my university's honors program. I had worked my ass off for that, maintained a perfect GPA while juggling 2 part-time jobs. I remember showing them the acceptance letter. I was so proud. I thought maybe, for once, I'd made them proud too. Mom glanced at it and smiled, distracted. "That's great, sweetie. Have you thought about how you'll pay for it?" That was it. No dinner out, no post on Facebook, no "we're so proud of you." Phone calls to relatives. Just that one question. How would I afford it? Jake got into the same university a year later. Different program, lower requirements, no honors. The whole house lit up like Christmas morning, balloons, pizza night. Grandma was on speakerphone crying tears of joy. Dad called it the beginning of a dynasty. A dynasty. I started seeing a pattern. Jake was always the golden one. The charming, funny, effortlessly likable younger son. He played sports, dated cheerleaders, made everyone laugh at family dinners. I was more reserved, more focused. I liked books, I liked quiet. I was dependable. And I guess in my family, dependability meant invisibility. When things went wrong, I was the fixer, the helper, the one they called when the car broke down or when Mom needed help printing her resume. When Dad couldn't figure out online banking, I spent hours setting it up for him. When Jake missed his rent deadline, I lent him $300 from my meager savings. He never paid it back, and I never asked. Because that's what family does, right? That was always their line. We look out for each other. But somewhere along the line, each other stopped including me. I started remembering how often I was left out of decisions. The family trip to the lake house that I found out about after they got back. The group chat I wasn't in. The Christmas photo they mailed out that year. Just the 3 of them smiling in matching sweaters. I asked Mom about it. "Oh, that? It was just a last-minute thing. You were busy with work, weren't you?" I was never too busy for them, but they were always too busy to remember me. There was even a stretch, my senior year of college, when I thought maybe I was the problem. That maybe if I tried harder, they'd see me. I called more, sent pictures, asked how they were, brought gifts when I visited. I even organized a surprise anniversary dinner for my parents at their favorite Italian place. Jake showed up an hour late, half drunk, didn't pay a dime, and still, he was the one they hugged the tightest when we said goodbye. It wasn't just favoritism. It was systemic erasure. And it ran deeper than I wanted to admit. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. At first, I didn't go looking for answers. I didn't want to be the kind of person who snoops around their own family. But something had shifted in me. That pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. It kept whispering, "You're being lied to. You've been lied to for years." It started with a receipt. I was at home one weekend doing the laundry. As I was folding towels in the living room, I noticed an envelope poking out from under the couch. I assumed it was junk mail, but when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. It was a printed receipt, dated 2 months earlier, from a luxury resort in Lake Tahoe. 3 nights, executive suite, room service, spa packages, total $3,842. I stared at it for a long time. My parents hadn't mentioned any trip. There were no photos on social media, no stories, nothing, just silence. That same month, I had asked them for a small loan, $150, to cover a car repair after my battery died on the way to work. Mom told me they were barely holding it together. Dad said they were digging into savings just to pay the mortgage. They were in Lake Tahoe. It didn't stop there. I started noticing little things. A new Keurig machine in the kitchen. Dad's watch looked newer. Jake's room had an upgraded gaming setup with a curved monitor and noise-canceling headphones. I never saw any boxes arrive, so I asked Mom about it once. "Oh, that?" Jake brought that back from school. "Some of it's gifted," she said casually. "Gifted by whom?" One night I logged into our shared family Netflix account and accidentally clicked on the profile labeled guest. I didn't even know we had one. What I found made my stomach turn. An entire watch history of shows I knew none of us watched. Except maybe during their struggling months. I cross-checked dates, the Lake Tahoe trip, the Iceland travel plan, a separate resort stay in Sedona 6 months ago. All of them lined up with periods when I was either covering utilities at home or skipping meals to save. The realization hit me like a slap to the face. They weren't broke. They were just selective. Selective about where the money went. Selective about who they were honest with. Selective about who deserved luxury and who deserved struggle. And it wasn't even about Jake being evil. He was oblivious. In his world, this was normal. He didn't question why things came easier to him, because they always had. He assumed everyone got cars handed to them, trips paid for, rent quietly covered behind the scenes. He never noticed my silence, my cracked phone, the dark circles under my eyes from juggling shifts. Number Jake wasn't the villain here. My parents were. They were the ones who looked me in the eyes and said, "We're all in this together." They were the ones who taught me that family means sacrifice, while they treated mine as disposable. They were the ones who built a house where love had conditions. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with slamming doors or screaming matches. It was quiet, cunning, woven into the everyday moments I thought were innocent. And now, with every new lie I uncovered, I realized something even more painful than the favoritism. They didn't think I'd ever be smart enough or brave enough to figure it out. But they were wrong. The day I packed my bags, no one tried to stop me. I didn't make a big announcement. There was no grand confrontation, no screaming in the kitchen or slamming of doors, just silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I told them I'd found a room to rent near work. Technically true. I didn't mention that it was barely livable or that I had no furniture besides a secondhand mattress I found on Craigslist and a folding chair I picked up from Target's clearance aisle. I just said, "It's time I have my own space." And my mom nodded like I'd just told her I was getting a haircut. Jake didn't even look up from his phone. It stung. More than I let on. And it shouldn't have. By that point, I'd seen enough to know where I stood. But something about the ease with which they let me go, it carved a deeper hole than I was ready to admit. I'd spent so long convincing myself that maybe it was all in my head. That I was just sensitive. That if I stayed long enough, loved hard enough, gave more, they'd eventually see me. They'd appreciate me. They didn't. So I left. And it was hell. The room I moved into was barely bigger than a walk-in closet. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor sneeze, and also argue with her boyfriend at 2 a.m. every other night. I didn't have a kitchen, just a microwave perched precariously on top of a dented mini-fridge. There was no heat. My mattress was lumpy and smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. My first night there, I killed 2 cockroaches and cried myself to sleep. My paycheck barely covered rent. After groceries, gas, and bills, I had maybe $30 left each week. I learned how to stretch canned beans and rice like it was an Olympic sport. I reused tea bags. I cut my own hair. There were nights I skipped dinner, not because I wasn't hungry, but because I needed bus fare more. I cried. A lot. Mostly in silence. Lying on that saggy mattress, staring at the ceiling with a pit in my stomach, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Wondering if I was being dramatic. Wondering if I'd ruined the only real support system I had. Even if it was one-sided. I missed them. Even after everything, I still found myself reaching for my phone when something good or bad happened. I wanted to share. I wanted to hear, "We're proud of you." I wanted connection. And it gutted me to realize that I'd been clinging to an illusion of family, a version of them that only existed in my hopes. And yes, there were moments I hated Jake. Not because he had more, but because he didn't know. Because he had the love I fought for and never got. because he moved through life believing he was supported, because he was. And I had spent mine trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But bitterness is a poison that only kills the one who drinks it. I couldn't afford to be bitter. So I got to work. I picked up side gigs, anything I could get my hands on. I edited college essays, helped high schoolers prep for SATs, ran social media for a tiny cafe across town. I started taking copywriting contracts on freelance platforms, slowly building up a client list. Some days were 18 hours long. Some weeks I slept maybe 4 hours a night, but I kept going. Because with every invoice paid, every project completed, every review that said reliable, professional, great communicator, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. I wasn't rich, I wasn't even comfortable, but I was no longer begging for scraps, no longer waiting for permission to matter. Every small win felt enormous. The first week I bought groceries without checking my account twice, the moment I upgraded from the folding chair to a proper desk. The Saturday morning I stayed in bed just because I wanted to, not because I was too depressed to move. I started drawing again, something I hadn't done since high school. At first it was just doodles in a spiral notebook I found at a thrift store, then bigger sketches, then digital art. I remembered that I used to create, that I had a voice, that I wasn't just the dependable one, the helper, the shadow in the corner of family photos. I began to feel full, not happy, not yet, but whole, real, like I was finally stepping into my own skin after years of trying to fit into one they chose for me. For so long I lived like a guest in my own family, grateful for crumbs, apologetic for needing, desperate to earn a seat at a table that was already mine by right. But now, on my own, broke, exhausted, and absolutely alive, I finally understood something I never had before. I didn't need them to see me. I just needed to see myself. With time, things began to shift. Not all at once, not in some movie montage kind of way. It was gradual, quiet, but it was real. I got promoted at work. It wasn't a massive leap, a new title, a bit more money, but it meant something. My boss said she appreciated my reliability, the way I handled projects without drama. It was the first time in years someone had looked me in the eye and said, "You matter here." And this time, it wasn't followed by expectations or strings, just recognition. I moved into a better place too. A small one-bedroom apartment with real walls, a working oven, and enough space to breathe. I bought my first couch. It wasn't new, but it was mine. I painted the walls a soft green, hung up some of my sketches, filled the shelves with books I had hoarded from thrift stores and garage sales. Slowly, my world expanded beyond survival. I met Claire at a networking event. She worked in nonprofit communications, smart, grounded, the kind of person who saw through small talk like it was glass. We clicked instantly, maybe because she didn't try to fix me. She just listened. With her, I didn't have to perform strength or shrink into silence. They could say, "I'm tired." And she wouldn't try to change the subject. She'd just say, "Let's rest then." That kind of gentleness changes you. Claire was the first person to really understand how my family's betrayal had shaped me. She never called it just favoritism. She called it what it was: emotional neglect wrapped in loyalty rhetoric. She said, "You gave them the benefit of the doubt for years. That was love. But now you're learning how to love yourself." She was right. For the first time, I had people who saw me, not the version I had to become to be tolerated, but me. My coworkers invited me to dinners. My roommate from college reconnected and offered freelance work. Friends brought soup when I was sick. It was simple, but it was sacred. And these weren't grand gestures. They were people choosing to show up and meaning it. And I began to let them. I stopped pretending I was fine all the time. I let myself say, "That hurt." I started writing again, not for clients, but for myself. Little essays, memories, bits of poetry I scribbled in my notes app on the subway. I submitted a piece to a small online journal and got published. Nothing big, but it lit something in me. Something that said, "You're allowed to take up space." I no longer measured my worth by how useful I was to others. I didn't wait for a gold star from people who only ever saw me as a backup plan. I stopped chasing validation from a family that never truly saw me as their own. And that's when the truth finally sank in. Family isn't just blood. It's not the people who share your last name or your genetics. It's not the ones who post proud parent selfies while ignoring your calls. It's not the ones who feed your brother's steak while handing you scraps with a smile. It's the ones who stay, the ones who listen, the ones who choose you over and over without needing a reason. That's the family I was building now. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's home. I felt real, solid, enough. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I wasn't going back. It started with a group text from my mother. No preface, no small talk, just Grandma's 80th birthday next Saturday. Family dinner at the house, 6 p.m. Hope you can make it. That was it. No, we miss you. No, how have you been? After nearly a year of silence, after they watched me disappear from their lives without so much as a phone call, this was the first time I heard from them. And the old me would have agonized over it. The old me would have wondered what they meant by hope you can make it, dissected every syllable, asked myself if this was their way of opening the door to reconciliation. But I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't respond right away. I didn't feel the need to. Instead, I marked the date in my calendar and made a quiet decision. I would go. Not for them, not to forgive, not to confront. I would go to remind myself and them who I had become without their love. This wasn't revenge born of anger. It wasn't about screaming in their faces or throwing their hypocrisy back at them. No, I had already screamed. Into pillows, into the night, into silence. That part of me was quiet now. This revenge would be different, quiet or sharp or clean. I spent the week preparing, nothing flashy but intentional. I had just signed a new contract with a well-known digital media agency. It was the kind of deal that came with bonuses and visibility, and I was proud of it. I had also recently moved into a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with tall windows and light pouring in every morning. So I picked my favorite suit. Not loud, just elegant, tailored, understated luxury. I got a fresh haircut, trimmed my beard. I wore the watch I'd gifted myself when I hit my first 5-figure month. I booked a car for the evening. Sleek, black, quiet. Something that said success without shouting it. I showed up right on time. The driveway was already full. I parked at the end of the street and walked up slowly, every step steady, confident. I knew the moment I walked through that door, the game would change. Grandma opened it first. Her face lit up instantly. "Oh, my sweet boy," she cried, wrapping me in the kind of hug I hadn't felt in years. "You look amazing. Absolutely amazing." "Happy birthday, Grandma," I said, smiling. "You look incredible." She beamed as she led me inside. The noise of the living room dimmed as I stepped in. Conversations paused. Heads turned. My mother looked stunned. Her wine glass froze midair. Jake blinked as if he had seen a ghost. My father gave me a tight-lipped smile, the kind he used when he didn't know what else to do. I smiled, calm and polite. I greeted everyone by name, hugged who I needed to, shook hands with distant cousins. I took my seat like I belonged there, because I did. But I noticed it. The looks, the double takes, the side whispers. They had expected a shadow. I gave them light. Dinner started. Roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables. The table buzzed with surface-level chatter. I let it wash over me like static. I didn't need their attention. I already had it. And then, as expected, someone asked, "So, what have you been up to these days?" It was Aunt Linda. Well-meaning, nosy, loud. I took a sip of water and smiled. "Work's been great. I run my own content strategy firm now. Just hired our 3rd employee last month. We're growing faster than I expected." "Oh, wow," someone murmured. Jake looked up then, curious. "Wait, like full-time?" "Yeah," I said. "I left my corporate job a while ago. Too many limits. Now I get to choose my clients, set my rates, and build something real." My dad shifted in his chair. "And outside of work?" Aunt Linda continued. "You've kind of disappeared lately." There it was. The door. I could have sidestepped it, played it safe. But I was tired of safety. So I leaned in, still smiling. "Well," I said, "I guess disappearing became necessary when I realized I was the only one showing up." The room went still. I kept my voice soft. No bitterness, just truth. I used to think we were all struggling together, that we were a team, but I was just the one quietly holding things up while no one noticed. Jake looked uncomfortable. I didn't flinch. "I remember asking for help with rent once," I continued, turning to my mother. "You said things were too tight. I understood. I believed you. Then I found out about the trip to Lake Tahoe and the Tesla and the new TV. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised a hand gently. No need to explain. I'm not here for apologies, just honesty. I turned to Jake. You didn't do anything wrong. You were taken care of, protected. That's what family should do. I just wasn't family in that way. Silence. I stood up, not abruptly, gracefully. I'm glad I came tonight, I said, smoothing my jacket. It reminded me how far I've come, how much I've grown, and that sometimes distance isn't about bitterness, it's about peace. I placed my napkin gently on the plate. My life is good now, really good, and I didn't need anyone here to make it happen. But I hope, truly, I hope you're all doing well too. And with that, I smiled. Not cold, not cruel, just calm. Complete. And I walked out before anyone could say a word. As I stepped onto the porch, I caught the sound of a fork dropping, a chair scraping, a low, whispered, "What just happened?" from someone inside. I didn't need to turn around. I didn't need to look back, because they'd remember. Not the outfit, not the car, not even the career. They'd remember that I walked in as someone they once overlooked, and walked out as someone they couldn't ignore. I didn't cry after I left the party. Not even when I sat alone in my apartment that night, my jacket still draped over the arm of the couch, the smell of roasted garlic still faint on my collar. I poured myself a glass of wine, took a deep breath, and just sat there. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger, it was something new, something quieter, peace. I had said what I needed to say. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't tried to make them feel small. I had simply shown them what I had become, and let the contrast do the rest. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself or hope they'd change. I no longer needed their understanding to feel valid. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jake. Hey, I know last night was intense. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you were carrying. I should have seen it. I was too caught up in my own bubble. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at the message for a long time. Jake wasn't cruel. He never had been. He was just protected, coddled, blinded by a system that worked in his favor. It had never occurred to him to question why things were easier for him, because they always had been. And I had never challenged it, because I thought protecting the peace meant silencing my pain. I responded simply, "Thanks for the message. I appreciate it. I'm doing well now. I hope you are too." That was all. And it was enough. Jake reached out a few more times after that. Small things, checking in, asking about my work, sharing memes like we were kids again. We never talked about the past in depth, but I could feel the shift. He wasn't trying to fix things. He was trying to be a brother again, in the only way he knew how. I didn't push him away. But I didn't open the door all the way either. Some wounds don't need salt to sting. They just need space to stop bleeding. As for my parents, nothing, not a word. No follow-up, no apology, no olive branch. And I didn't expect one. Their silence was confirmation of everything I had always known. They had never seen me as someone worth fighting for. And that was okay, because I'd stopped waiting for them to choose me. Instead, I chose myself. I leaned into the life I had built. Claire and I grew closer. She never pressed me about my family, but she always made sure I knew I had one. With her. With the friends we hosted game nights with the neighbors who helped us move our new couch in, with the barista who knew my order and asked about my writing. That was my family now. Not the one I was born into, but the one I built. The one that saw me, heard me, chose me over and over, no conditions. One evening, months later, Claire and I hosted a small dinner at our place. 6 friends, 2 dogs, lots of wine. At some point, someone asked me if I still talked to my parents. I thought about it, then said, "Not really." They nodded, respectful. No pity in their eyes, no judgment, just quiet understanding. In that moment, I realized something I wish I had known years ago. You don't owe loyalty to people who use love as a mask for favoritism. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't hand you silence and call it strength. It doesn't demand loyalty while giving you leftovers. Sometimes love looks like your best friend showing up at 11 p.m. with ice cream because your pitch got rejected. Sometimes It's your partner squeezing your hand under the table when someone brings up your past. Sometimes, love looks nothing like you expected, because it's better. Sometimes, the best family is the one you build yourself. These days, I still think about them. Not with anger, not with longing, just as a reminder of how far I've come, of how hard I've fought, of how much I refuse to disappear. And when I look around now, at my home, my friends, my work, my peace, others, I don't feel like something's missing. I feel whole. I feel chosen, not by them, by me.